Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, Movie Reviews to Connections of Mind, and welcome back to my reaction series to each and every episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. Now, if you've just popped into this series in this episode, this is just my short form series where I just give my thoughts on the episode as soon as they come out, as well as some analysis as to certain plot developments and character arcs in that episode that may seem familiar and where you may have seen them before. Now, with all that said, and without further ado, let's get into Season 2, Episode 6 of Star Trek Discovery, entitled The Sound of Thunder. Now, this episode focuses on another appearance by the Red Angel, the mysterious being that has been cropping up all season long, this time around the home planet of Commander Saru. The Discovery returns to this planet, and we get a little background on Saru's species and the dynamics on his planet. His species, the Kelpians, are considered the prey species on his planet, whereas the Ba'ul are the predator species on the planet. They have achieved warp capability and other advanced technology, whereas the Kelpians live rather primitive lives and are still controlled by their fear as their main trait. However, due to the Saru's encounter with an alien sphere with unknown properties and a influence on him that made him lose his threat ganglia as well as suppress his fear instincts, Saru is now essentially a more evolved version of the Kelpians, and he sees it as his responsibility to inform his people that the great balance that his people have been living under this whole time is essentially a lie, and it is revealed how much of a lie that is in this episode. Now, this episode rightly focuses a lot on Saru as the character and his dynamic as both a Starfleet officer and in a newly created person in a sense, and as his family dynamic, where we get to meet his sister that he hasn't seen in 18 years. This is reminiscent in a way of how the character was introduced of Neelix on Star Trek Voyager, in that both Neelix and Saru are the only example of their species serving on a Starfleet vessel. Both of them fled their home planets after for various reasons, and at certain points, they each return to their home planets under less than ideal conditions and have to face some hard truths about themselves. So, not necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison, but an interesting parallel nonetheless. Also, this revelation of the predator-prey dynamic of the Ba'ul and the Kelpians, I almost equate that to the relationship between the Wraith and humans in Stargate Atlantis. In fact, they even use the same term, culling, to describe the relationship of the predator species hunting down and killing the prey species, namely the Wraith hunting, capturing humans in order to consume them, suck out their life force. Very similar to how the Ba'ul are the predator species of the Kelpians. Now, this also features the revelation that the sphere that Discovery encountered earlier in the season contains numerous data on the Kelpians' planet and their society from thousands of years ago. And it turns out that the Ba'ul were the original prey species and were nearly driven to extinction. However, they somehow came back and wiped out the more evolved versions of the Kelpians, namely the ones that survived the Vahare and lost their threat ganglia and became more aggressive, predatorial, and the Kelpians that we had seen thus far are the ones that survived, and the ones that were cultivated as fearing the Ba'ul and became the prey species. And of course, the Ba'ul have been vigorously suppressing this knowledge that the Vahare is not a deadly disease, but is in fact an evolutionary natural development for the Kelpian species. This reminded me a lot of an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation entitled Transfigurations, which also featured an alien species that suppressed knowledge that their species is evolving into something else, and the people who are more evolved than others are vigorously hunted down. And it is only when one member of that species actually survives this supposedly deadly condition and evolves into a higher being that he comes back and confronts the ruling class of his species to find and to convince them that there needs to be change on their world. So those are my main comparisons of this episode. Now, overall, my thoughts of this episode was it is definitely entertaining. I'm glad they got back to the Red Angel story arc. I feel like we've kind of gone off the track a little bit the last couple episodes in our side quests, and I'm glad to see that I believe this is the third signal that they've investigated for the Red Angel. And I like how we're diving deeper into Saru's character. I like how he's changing and evolving as a character. He's not just a one-note, I sense death when it comes. I like how he is growing as a character. I think that was very important in that regard. I also like the fact that this episode is delving more into the origin of the Red Angel and how discussing who and what it might be, and the revelation that it is in fact a humanoid person in a highly advanced suit gives some revelation into what's going on. And I was recently reading an article that suggested that the Red Angel may actually be future Spock in this uniform, as the Red Angel, and he's going back in time. I'm not sure about that so much, but it is definitely seeming more and more likely that is in fact a time traveler who is coming to alter the past in certain respects. And well, that'll be interesting to see the ramifications of that as they go on, but it'll also be interesting to see how they dance around whether or not it will have any major effect on the Federation and how it will affect the Federation as we know it's going into the original series. So those are all interesting things to go look for. I was definitely pleased with this episode, and I look forward to seeing where they lead next. It looks like next week's episode we will finally get to see young Spock in this series, and we get to finally catch up with him, which, judging by the trailer, I'm betting will probably be near the very end of that episode. Who knows? But I'm looking forward to see how that turns out. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on this week's episode. Let me know what you thought. Did you like the episode? Did you not like the episode? What did you think of my analysis? Did I get something wrong? Did I leave something out? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my reactions to the latest episode of The Orville, which is now up, as well as I'll be posting my review of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, which comes out this weekend. And also be sure to look for my review of next week's episode of Star Trek Discovery next week. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your viewership, but just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.